Czech się mówi. Witam Państwa bardzo serdecznie na ostatnim dzisiejszym panelu, który ma tytuł Przyszłość energetyki w Europie Środkowej między atomem a wodorem. Być może jeszcze inne.
Welcome to the last panel that is called The Future of Energetics in Central Europe from Nuclear to Hydrogen.
I'm from portal Energetica 24PL, and it is a big topic for us. Many of you, me included, think about what the future of energy is going to look like in Europe. The period we are living in is very transformative. We have many questions, many policies linked to energy security. The biggest event of the last years is, of course, the war in Ukraine and stopping our dependency on Russia. There are many great panelists. On my right hand, we have Martin Durczak, who is the chairman of the board of directors of CEVRO. Then we have the president and CEO of KGHM Polska Miedź, and then we have Tomasz Wiatrak, who is the chairman of the board of directors and CEO at Orlen Unipetrol, and Paweł Cyrany, who is the vice chairman of the board of directors of the ČEZ Group. And we can begin with the climate question, the climate neutrality, and the goal that has been set by the EU to be carbon neutral by 2050. I have a question for Tomasz Wiatrak. What does Orlen and Unipetrol see in the future of the transformation? How do you envision the next decades? Thank you so much for the question. I would say that the future of energy policy is zero emission. However, the strategy of the group Orlen, who is the first company in Central Europe who said that want to be carbon neutral by 2050, we are the first one to be a zero emission set society. But it is not something that is going to be done tomorrow. It is a marathon. And between the years 2022 and 2050, there are many, many smaller sprints. And we have to be flexible. We have to be able to react quickly to the events that are happening. And we should not dwell on our set goals. We have to be flexible and change them according to what is happening in the world, but we have to respect the rules. The goal has to be precisely set. We have to say what we want to achieve, and we have to formulate it clearly and publicly. And we have to start somewhere. But then we are going to have to react to the situation ahead of us appropriately. We have to adapt our plans to the future. Our plan envisions that by 2030 we are going to limit our emissions to the level of 20%. So we are going to lower it by 20%. That is the area where the process emissions are harder to limit than the energy emissions. We are focusing on decarbonization. We are leaving fossil fuels. We are using gas, and later we want to use renewable sources of energy. When we talk about what is going on in the world, the prices of energy, the prices of gas, how the future is unclear, we have to stop for a moment and think about the direction we should be heading towards. Should the intermission gas, should we be more flexible when choosing the fuel? To sum it up, do we support our long-term goals? Are we sticking to them? We want to achieve neutrality by 2050, but we want to see tangible results by 2030. But we want to stay flexible as well, and we want to leave fossil fuels and invest into renewable energy sources, but they have to be adequate and adapted to the conditions we are living in. It is easy to say, yes, let's build photovoltaic panels and wind power plants, but we have to have sun and we have to have wind. And we have to have a grid that will be able to balance the renewable sources. I understand, of course, that you want to use wind energy the most because of your name. Yes, of course, but that's a joke. What are the main challenges for CEPS as the main distributor? According to the 943 directive, we are tasked with balancing the resources. We are controlling and dispatching of the transmissions and distribution systems. We are looking at how many renewable sources we are going to integrate, how many things we have to build, and we have to give an outlook. This study has about 90 pages every year. There were transmission systems in the past that weren't up to date. These reports are then submitted to the EU, and there were transmission and distribution systems that only put in one Excel sheet, but we put in a 90-page long document. But nowadays, in light of the situation in Ukraine and in France, there are new reports that are being worked on, and everybody now realizes that it is important to give clear and real data. And we have been doing that for a long time. And we have been saying for 3 years that the situation with prices would arise, war or no war. Maybe it wouldn't be as brutal, maybe it wouldn't be as soon, but it would come. We see that there has been no building in Europe And I'm talking about building of resources. There is something called capacity mechanism that allows backup resources to quickly compensate for gaps in the market. But the resources are limited in Europe as well as the Czech Republic. So we have to revise our approach. And we think that in the future, the energy sector is in our region going to be reliant on 3 resources. Nuclear energy as the core of our energetic mix, then something renewable, and that is going to be wind in Poland and solar panels in the Czech Republic. And third, hydrogen, something we need to compensate. Our energy consumption is going to have to double. If we want to be carbon neutral and we have to have clean industry, we must electrify and we must increase our consumption. Thank you very much. Yes, we are talking about increasing the consumption. We are talking about changing our resources. So is the answer to this question of energy and green transition nuclear energy? Are these small nuclear reactors the answer? Because that has been talked about a lot in the last months. Yes, I'm asking myself this very question every day. Is our company ready for such a challenge? And I think that we are ready. People often ask us that whether a company that is not an energy company, we do not produce energy, if we are going to deal with nuclear energy, if we are going to look towards nuclear energy as the answer, I have a brick. Unfortunately, it isn't golden because it's very expensive. I wouldn't be able to transport it. I have a copper brick here, and it is something tangible, but the gold isn't transportable because that's dangerous. But that's besides the point. Every 7th person in this room, every single one of you has a smartphone, but 1/7 of the users has our components from our company. Our commercial strategy as the first silver exporter and the 7th exporter of copper, we are saying that it is important to maintain the position in the market that we have right now. From the commercial point of view, we have to think about how to stay in this competitive market. The exchange rate of silver, gold, or copper doesn't depend on us and us solely, but depends on the whole market. 1 year ago, before the war, it has been decided that we have to find a stable source of income. In the first panel, Mr. Vondra commented on how much sun and wind we have in our countries, but the productivity of photovoltaic panels is 20% of wind, 43% of sea, and about 40% of sun. But for coal it is 85%, and for nuclear it is over 90%. We do not need energy only when the sun is shining and when the wind is blowing. Somebody was explaining to me that 40 days, there was no wind for 40 days, and that he almost had a heart attack.
W danym tym wsadzie i z huty wychodzi.
So the copper mining is really demanding in terms of energy. It needs a lot of energy. And the amount of copper we produce is manufactured in Poland. So in Poland, we are the third electricity consumer in Poland. We need electricity because we wouldn't be able to operate without electricity. There are 33,000 people working in our company in Poland, and all around the world. We have co-workers in Chile, the USA, Canada. We have our mines and facilities. Our competitiveness could reduce without electricity or without the access to enough electricity. That's why we started to look for a different source of electricity. We decided we didn't want to rely on coal anymore. We have our own coal, we work with it, but we decided to choose another option. We had a list of potential energy resources. We signed a contract for a new technology. And thanks to that, we might find new investments in energy sector. So that's why we are here as a non-energetic company. If there are any comments, just don't hesitate to speak up. Now I have a question to Pavel Tserani. He's the vice chairman of one of the biggest groups in Central Europe, the CES group. This is a company with very diverse portfolio. So what energy resources do you use? What do you plan to use? And what do you plan to stop using? Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to say that the energy sector had always three goals: sustainability, affordability, financial affordability, and competitiveness, and security, safety. And those had to be balanced. Sometimes people forget one peak of this goal triangle. There are times when one of those goals is more emphasized, or we have a lack of one of these goals. We, as a CES group, decided to build our strategy on all those three goals. And we have to use zero-emission resources, save resources in terms of not being dependent on raw materials from Russia, for example. So renewable resources, small modular reactors. We don't want to be dependent on Russian gas, and so on. When debating about these 5-6 things I've mentioned, we find ourselves in a debate that is quite pointless, because we need to rebuild energy sectors. The Czech Republic produces 70 terawatt-hours. We consume 60 and we export 10 per year. The result of the current situation is that we will increase consumption, but we won't have enough production. We will lack tens of terawatt-hours per year. In 30 years after the war, there were nuclear power plants built. In France, for example, they built 60 nuclear power plants in 30 years. So now we have to adapt to the new situation and build more power plants, more resources, find more resources, because we need that. Thank you very much. Yeah, I remember the plan of a French president when France built the majority of their nuclear power plants very quickly. But the name of our panel includes hydrogen. Hydrogen as an energy source. But some people are very skeptical towards the hydrogen, scientists, politicians. So, open question for every one of you. What can be done in terms of hydrogen within your society, within your company, and how do you think about the future of hydrogen? Is it going to be useful in the energy sector or transport, or what do you think about it? Well, we take part in testing hydrogen, the production of hydrogen through electrolysis. We would want to use it for balancing mechanisms in the system. We think that the hydrogen will play its role. I would like to reflect on Mr. Sirani's words. Some people say that everything will be using hydrogen in the future, and some people say that nothing will be using hydrogen. But I think we have to find balance within these opinions. For example, Germany will rely on hydrogen when the technology will be advanced enough. So don't think about it like having hydrogen economy within a year. No one will have that. It is not possible. But yes, the hydrogen technology will develop, will evolve, and will be included in our economy, but don't think about it like having hydrogen power plants within 10 years. That's not possible. In Siemens, we saw the development of turbines, and they were very advanced, but they said that their turbines had not been tested yet. And the first test that they took lasted only about 2 hours because they hadn't had enough hydrogen. So we have to be realistic. And yes, the hydrogen will come, but it won't be very soon. Thanks for your comment. I know that Orlen Unipetrol has experience with hydrogen. For us, the hydrogen is not the future, it is our present and also our past. We every year we consume 80,000 tons of hydrogen. I'm not talking about the green hydrogen, but about the gray hydrogen, which is produced during the manufacturing of oil. And it is used for the manufacturing of ammonia. The green hydrogen is also a perspective, and we would like to replace the gray hydrogen with the green one. There are technologies testing it, but there's not enough technologies for that. We are planning to build a new manufacturer in the Czech Republic that would use 4,500 tons of the green hydrogen every year. So we're talking about something that is being developed in the industry, and we would be using it in our company. And as I said, we are planning to use 4,500 tons every year, which is a quite big amount. And we have a lot to build to be able to use this. If we wanted to replace the whole technology in our company by this technology for green hydrogen, it would be really difficult. We would need tens of thousands, 10,000 tons of the green hydrogen, but the development is here. We take part in the development, but it's not only about energy, electricity, but we also have to replace fuels, traditional fuels like oil. And the traditional fuels are now the most affordable and the most efficient ones. They can be replaced by electricity or hybrid technologies using batteries or technologies using hydrogen. It's clear, but this way is the way for the future. It is discussed on the EU and national level, but the EU infrastructure is not ready for this change. Sometimes we try to look too far into the future. We try to use solutions that are too advanced for our times. We want to replace current resources, but we have to start at the base, we need to be efficient. We need to use efficient technology. And when we can do that, we can use new technologies. We can develop on the new technologies. Thank you. Thank you very much. Recently, when I checked how many hydrogen fuel stations there are, there is 5. There is not very much of them, and there are not many of them, which is quite sad. In Germany there are more, of course, but still not enough. The goal, the biggest target is the green hydrogen, but we might develop the technology in 80 years. The future is very far away. We cannot use it as a decarbonized fuel. Yes, we use electricity, petrol, but the technology is, the future is in batteries now, not in the hydrogen.
In the future, we are going to be focusing on the electrolysis, and there, where we're using natural gas, we want to use hydrogen in the future. But we must realize that even though that it is possible to use hydrogen, it is first imperative to change our infrastructure as a whole to be able to add hydrogen into our energetic mix. And it cannot be done tomorrow. There are large investments needed before we can do that. We are optimistic, but very cautiously optimistic. We can't say that it is unreal, and it is not in our nature to think in that way, but the future is going to be seen after the first trials in a year or a year and a half. There is another thing that is important. I was able to have a look at some innovative materials in Poland that are very important for us as importers. But when we look at the price of hydrogen, it is now very high. And if we were to transfer to hydrogen, we would need 60,000 tons per year, but that cannot be done in 3 to 4 years. So we are cautiously optimistic. We do not say that it's impossible, but we have to find alternative solutions. Thank you so much. And the same question is for another panel member. So what do you plan to do in terms of green hydrogen in the Czech Republic? We are trying to familiarize ourselves with the hydrogen technology. At the moment, we are working on a couple of pilot projects. We are working with Central Bohemia and are trying to fuel buses that are going to be driving around Central Bohemia right now. But it is very problematic because we cannot test hydrogen pilots outside the chemistry industry. It is very hard to find anybody who is ready for this experiment at this technological era. So we got lucky that there were buses in the central Bohemian region, and the project is supported. And we have a similar project in Slovakia as well. But I have one more remark, and that is that the production of hydrogen in the Czech Republic through solar panels is a dead end. It is good to test it, but an electrolyzer is a very costly solution, and we have to use it for 8,760 hours, which is simply not tangible in terms of sun exposure in the Czech Republic. We will either import the hydrogen, or we could say that pink is the new green, and by pink hydrogen, I mean hydrogen from the nuclear power plants. So these are our two options. The advantage is that we can import it from many, many countries. But if we were to produce it locally, it will have to be based on carbon and nuclear power plants. Someone is calling this sort of hydrogen the purple hydrogen, someone is calling it the pink, but it doesn't really matter. All the companies that you're representing here use renewable resources to some extent. That is the cheapest sort of energy, because the primary energy resources are very costly at the minute. Is renewable energy in the company KGHM comparable to the nuclear, or is it something that is in the future? There are two things to say. We are looking towards the year 2030, and we are talking about a period of 10 years. And we are looking to build a small nuclear power plant, or after getting the okay from our ministry, at least one wind power plant. And there are 11 locations we could choose from, but that's besides the point. That's sort of long term. We want to talk about this in context of the wind power plants in Poland. We are talking about wind parks in Poland, and we take this question seriously, and we are buying energy in a way as to have a balanced energetic mix in our company. We are trying to diversify day by day, and we are still working on our nuclear project. We are in close partnership with the French company that focuses on nuclear energy as well. We have to deal with the period to come, and that's why we are negotiating a buyout of complete wind power parks, because if we were to build them from scratch ourselves, it is not possible in Poland because we do not have that many. We are not only focusing on the nuclear, we are focusing on the whole energetic mix. Thank you so much for your answer. Unipetrol Orlen is also concerned with the wind energy and the energy from the sea. What are your hopes for the future for these projects? It looks dynamic so far. Yes, Orlen is a very active company in this area, not only because my name sounds like the wind, but it is a trend that companies that create fuels are following. And I'm not only talking about Central Europe, but you can see that all around the world, if they do not have the a possibility to invest in renewable energy resources, they focus on this. We are in very close cooperation with the Baltic countries, and I am convinced that the production of energy through wind power plants and these wind parks is going to be used efficiently in the future to create hydrogen, and it can be a very efficient source for the further development of hydrogen projects in Poland. When it comes to Czech Republic, you do not have access to the sea. Kaliningrad is not yet integrated into the Republic, but we are trying to find an alternate solution to this problem. We have many projects where we are trying to use geothermal energy resources, and we are trying to prepare projects that will allow us to create energy, electric energy at our gas stations, actually. So we might be able to connect that with the producers of hydrogen, and it could be produced directly in the petrol stations. And this hydrogen could be used to power our petrol stations. In the Czech market, we can see that the renewable energies aren't ever efficient enough to reply to the demand of all the working processes that you have in the Czech Republic. I think that the investments in small nuclear power plants is crucial. Yes, that's true. Orlen has signed a contract concerning small reactors, so you can create a cooperation here. I think there are many opportunities for cooperations, not only between companies but also between countries. So we were cooperating with CES on the technological level, but also on the legislative level. We have to remember that our goal is the same. We want to create a legislative framework that is going to allow the fulfillment of these projects. We cannot focus only on technology, but we have to think of the legislature as well. The Czech Republic is more advanced in this area because you have nuclear power plants. You have legislative documents that you can use. But the legislation for big reactors is a big challenge for all the companies that want to build smaller nuclear reactors. The goal to have zero emissions by 2050 can only be achieved through some sort of compromise. I am convinced that the Czech companies are going to help Poland and going to help us prepare legislation that is going to be convenient for this goal. I wanted to mention that the cooperation in the question of education and the support of nuclear energy, and I'm talking about showing the people that nuclear energy is a safe, renewable source of energy, lies in many areas. So we are showing how nuclear energy is stored, how the waste is stored. We have a mine, and the square footage is 550 square kilometers, so it's a larger city. But the Polish law says that the distance between a nuclear power plant and a mine has to be at least 30 kilometers. But nobody says if this should be a deep mine or a surface mine. So we are trying to find some spots for nuclear power plants to be able to be built in Poland. But we were able to cooperate with some Czech companies in the past. These are companies such as CEZ, and I'm very thankful for that. we have signed some contracts of cooperation, and we are using your experiences, and we are very glad that we can cooperate. We are going to talk about some renewable resources some more. And so the green transition or the energy transformation is concerned with the grid that has to be adapted to use new sources of energy. In Poland, we have to invest many resources to the modernization of this grid and of the infrastructure. What does the situation look like in the Czech Republic? So this is a question for Martin Durčák. So my question is, what does the energetic mix look like? What is your goal for 2030, 2050? Renewable energy sources do not have a dominant position in the Czech Republic, but they are going to have a more dominant position in the future. We have a large advantage and one large disadvantage. In the past, industry was in the east, and the resources were in the center and in the west. We have many strong links towards the east, and they are very big, and they give us so much energy. But if we were to build so many renewable resources, we would have to strengthen these links. And there are locations in the Czech Republic that aren't favorable to building a farm. And we tell them it will be possible within a couple of years because our links aren't strong enough. And they are very surprised because they do not expect that. They think it's very easy to build such a farm. And investors often think that, but it is not a reality.
Then everybody is surprised that their plans would last 10 years longer. Our colleagues say that we are able to build a new grid, for example, to Warsaw, with all the plans, preparations within 3.5 years. And I include here also the area and landscape acquisitions, contracts, and so on. We've been preparing one grid for 6 years now here in the Czech Republic. So for us it takes more than 14 years in comparison to Poland, as we've seen there 3.5 years of build. Thank you very much. And now Pavel Cyrani and the chess group that has recently published a report or a contract for a small modular reactor. This contract should be actually, or these new reactors should be applied in the Temelín power plant. So what is the project? Yes, we signed secret memorandums with potential providers. We want to get to know them better and to prepare a new project in Temelín. For us, this SMR technology could replace big reactors, but we want to get familiar with the technology. We would like to test it in Temelín because it is already a nuclear location. So there we could test those smaller reactors and prepare new projects. new projects in Bohemia and Moravia as well. The SMR is a technology that is on paper, but as my colleagues said, it is a very promising technology. It seems to be very efficient. It is able to provide electricity in smaller amount for example, a big factory. And the construction plans should be very standardized, so those should be very easy to build and very quick to build. But those modular reactors have to be same for at least the EU countries. Probably it would be better if they were similar for all countries in the world. So we have to find the technology that could do that all around the world and be competitive. When we learned more about these new plans and projects, we realized that this small reactor could be built around 2032. This would be sooner than the nuclear reactor in new nuclear reactor in Temelin. So this technology of SMR is really interesting, but I would like to ask on the biggest challenge connected to renewable resources. We had to deal with the fact that between 2010 to 2021, there were no conditions for building big renewable resources. This has changed. There is a new program that allows us to build new renewable resources. And there is also a second thing we hope to change soon. It is the process of permits. In the Czech Republic, you have to have a lot of permits in many fields to build something. So then the construction lasts 6 years minimum. So I hope that if this crisis brought us something positive, it would be the change of legislation in terms of construction permits. When it was needed, in Germany for the construction of LNG terminal, the permission process took 6 days. So those rules shouldn't be exception. We should have new laws or new legislation for a permission process. Thank you very much, Mr. Mr. Chruczynski would like to react. I would like to comment on. I would like to comment on the permission process and new SMR projects. Yes, there are projects that claim to offer a certain amount of megawatt hours, and so on. In Poland, we talk a lot about these SMR technologies. The public accepts this technology from about 80%. So this is very positive. We talked here about the north of the country. I would also like to talk about the south. And we joked about nuclear tourist trips, but I think that for the legislators, it is sometimes good to see the real thing, the real place. In the government, there's been a debate about indirect grids. We need 5 to 6 years to construct, to build certain resources. And when we build it, we might be able to connect it to the end consumer directly. And thank you very much. If there are any comments, questions, you can ask. If not, we can ask the audience. So your questions from the audience, so you can ask directly our guests. Good afternoon. I am a doctorate student of international relations. Today we've mentioned energy security a lot and about diversification. Diversification is a real buzzword today. The Russian resources are being cut off, so there is a trend of renewable resources, so finding new ways for energy. And all of these ways are in some way problematic, but we're not talking about that today. So are there resources reflecting all these trends, or are those just the technologies of the future that could be a way, but in a long term? And is there a way to avoid dependency on some other countries? And can we remain a strong player in this field? Thank you. Yeah, that was a very generic question, so someone's going to answer. Yeah, I think that diversification is our strength. So we should really avoid sticking to one single solution. So yes, we might replace our dependency on Russian gas with one technology, but we shouldn't really stick to that one only. We should let the market to work on its own to show the trends. The amount of technology we can use, or the ways we can use it, is not very wide, but we have to find diversity. Second problem is that we aim on the targets, but we don't really focus on the production and where the new technologies and new resources are produced. we say we want to produce certain technology in here, and the automobile industry wants a huge factory for batteries in here because we produce it in here. But that's not really the way. And I also think that Europe would be stronger with common foreign policy in terms of resources, defense, and so on. Because Europe's foreign policy is not unified. People conclude bilateral contracts with other countries, and it weakens the EU. For the taxonomy, recently I was surprised that Austria accused certain company for technology. Yes, some countries want to return their renewable resources back to Europe. We don't want to buy that in some countries that might be at risk of being insecure in the future. This also applies on the production of mirrors in Europe.
So there was a question for everybody. If anybody in the panel wants to react, go ahead. Yes, I want to react. I agree with my with the other panelists. Diversification is key, really. And I think that this task has been fulfilled by Europe. I don't think that they're going to make the same mistake twice. I see that we are talking about the diversifications of technologies and about what does the future of Europe looks like, but not only the future, also about what the problem is here and now. We are investing in multiple resources and in getting the fuel and the resources we need right here and now, but also what we will need in 20 years. But diversification comes at a cost, so nothing is free, and we have to take that into account. We have to remember to stay focused on solidarity. We shouldn't put this burden only on one subject and not the others. I think your question was precise because we as KGHM are in business relations with China. And we observe many areas that work better or worse, and currently it's rather worse. But in the past 2 years, we have come to know some risks and dangers in fulfillment of our orders in terms of renewable energy resources. Perhaps before we can build energy plants in Europe, it is going to be too late. But the question was very good. I have one comment on renewable energy resources. I think you could talk a lot about how you saved to Germany many times. You can tell us a story maybe, but my other comment is that even though I might be very conservative, but I think that without mineral fuels and coal and gas, we will not gonna be able to go on for too long. We will not be able to live without the nuclear energy. You are nicely optimistic, but my question is this. How long are you going to use mineral fuels? How long are you going to mine coal? And for how long are you going to burn fossil fuels and coals in your power plants? And I mean that while maintaining the light and the heat in the Czech Republic and Poland. I was the first one asked, so I'm going to answer. We are going to produce for as long as there is demand and for as long as there are subjects that need our power. So the question was for everybody, so what is the Czech's position? This answer was very diplomatic, as long as it's needed to ensure energy security. But we hope that in terms of heat production, we are going to be able to let go of coal by 2030. And I am rather optimistic when it comes to gas. And I think that with the LNG infrastructure, the gas is going to come back. And the cost is going to be below 100 euros, closer to what we knew before the war. But when it comes to the electricity production, it is hard to say if it's the year 35, 33, 38. But on the other hand, I think that it doesn't matter really, because the importance is going to drop for sure. It is going to drop, and by 2030 the drop is going to be significant, because if the renewable resources rise as much as we predict, we are not going to need gas or coal for long during the summer. I cannot give you a precise date, but it is going to be a security and economy decision. A terminal an LNG terminal in Kaliningrad, that would be really something. I don't think the question was for me directly, but I'm going to answer it anyway. I'm going to talk about something we haven't talked about yet, but I think it is really crucial. I remember a talk I had with a member of Orlen. We talked about a short-term outlook for about 3 or 4 years, and we came to a common conclusion. I said that we are going to that we mine copper, but we also mine coal, and that's why we are so successful. So we mine coal as a byproduct of our industry. We are in close cooperation with a company that produces gas, and I think that that is a real solution, because it's favorable to the decarbonization goal we have. We, as a company, are not going to make any differences. There was an anecdote about households not wanting to choose the Temelin energy because they wanted to refuse nuclear energy, and we are not looking to get rid of that. We are approaching the end of our panel, but I think we have some time for one last question, if anybody from the audience wants to ask. I do not see in the audience because it is very dark in here, but I don't think there are any questions. Okay, perfect. Then I would like to thank every member of the panel. Thank you, Mr. Wiatrek, Mr. Podgorski, Mr. Durczak, and Mr. Cyrani. Thank you to Wielki Projekt. And we are coming to the conclusion of our conference. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody, and as you rightfully said, it is dark in here. We have spent almost the whole day together. Everything started yesterday with our Congress when we could celebrate with the giving of a medal, and the Polish people are taking care of their country, and we are taking care of each other, and we are building the good relation between Poland and the Czech Republic. And finally, I think the most important conclusion is that we have to stick together. We have to have a coalition for reason in the EU, because we are fighting for the same goal, and Poland and the Czech Republic, as well as other countries in Central Europe, have to stick together. And I hope that today's conference did a little good to achieve that goal. And I hope for a further deepened cooperation in the area of energy security. And I want to thank again everybody who helped make this conference a reality. I want to thank the Polish Institute, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, the company Unipetrol, Orlen, KGHM, and the Auditorium 17 regional partner from Poland. Thank you so much.
Dzień dobry. Bardzo dziękuję, że pan przybył.